Being the spotlight is the place to network and chat with me. Being the spotlight is the place to chat with me. I'm Sue of ID.
Hello and welcome to Be in the Spotlight, and my special guest today is Holly from the Nurturing ND. And if you can tell us a little bit about the Nurturing ND and what inspired you to start that business, that would be lovely.
Okay, so Nurturing ND stands for Nurturing Neurodiversity. So I have been a teacher for many years now, too many to count, but I found myself specialising more and more in working with neurodivergent students. So I've done a specialist qualification in supporting learners with dyslexia, and then a specialist qualification in assessing for access arrangements in exams. So things like 25% extra time, and looking at whether readers or scribes or word processors would be of benefit to students. After that, I then specialised again and did an assessment practicing certificate, which enables me to assess and diagnose dyslexia and other specific learning difficulties. So with the tuition background, with working with learners of lots of different ages, so from secondary, FE, HE, adults in the workplace, and then the assessment practice, it felt like I had quite a lot to offer, and I needed to be able to kind of manage that myself and see how I could best support the learners who were coming to me. So that's where Nurturing ND came from.
It's brilliant. I love it. I love it. So what would you say are some of the most common or specific learning difficulties that you encounter with the assessments that you're doing?
So it depends, because obviously I do a range of assessments. So it depends what lens I'm looking at. If I'm doing access arrangements assessments, I will see lots of strengths across a profile, and then areas that people find more challenging, and hence the reason for access arrangements and special reasonable adjustments. In terms of the full diagnostic assessments, generally, if people are pursuing a diagnostic assessment, and because I specialise in older learners, so secondary up,
Yeah.
there is a fair background of information that has pushed them towards that. So initially, I trained as a secondary school teacher, and that was where my focus was. So I can do assessments from 11 right up until,
Yeah.
70. And so when I did my assessment practicing certificate qualification, I worked with older learners, so FE and HE. And by
Yeah.
that point, if you've been in education up to the
Yeah.
point of college and you've
Yeah.
got to university,
Yeah.
you have a really good understanding of where your strengths lie and where your difficulties are, but you've
Yeah.
also got quite a lot of compensatory strategies. So you
Yeah.
found ways around the things that you find difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think when somebody is pursuing a diagnostic assessment, they already think that they have
Yeah.
a specific learning difficulty, and it's looking for confirmation and
Yeah.
looking for other areas that they could capitalize on. So getting an understanding of the strengths that they have so that they can use those to
Yeah.
counteract the things that they find more challenging.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's interesting because obviously in the work that I do in adult education and prior to that in school and everything else, one of the things that I've had to do is work with learners doing exams, whatever age they are, and also oversee and manage the exam curriculum as well. But I've found that a lot of the issues that we've got in the area that I'm dealing with, which is the essential digital skills qualifications, the level of the language that's used in the paper does not match the level of the qualification at all. It's far higher than the level of the qualification that it's aimed at. Add on top of that a lot of the learners that I work with, English is a second language or an additional language. It makes it even harder for, making sure that they can read and understand and process the paper that we're working with. So I've had a lot of experiences now where they're reading the paper but they're not understanding the paper, both in English and as an additional language. So trying to establish what their level is, and trying to just identify whether it's because it's as a second language, or it's because they've got the processing, has been quite a challenging experience. But you sort of now, through my own journey with my own neurodiversity, have started to sort of see the characteristics or the markers or the indicators that I think we're going to need extra time for that that process. And because they may not even be aware of it themselves, they may not have had a diagnosis, and a lot of people of a generation haven't got that. You won't have got the access arrangements or support arrangements in place. So for me, I have to try and get that evidence from the work that I do in the classroom to show that that is the case. So it's been interesting. I have had to have a little word with one of my classes this week about the way that they've been doing their homework, and that using ChatGPT and copying and pasting from the internet might have demonstrated their skills for research and being able to copy and paste, but it didn't actually explain to me if they understood what they were reading or put it into their own words. So it's the first time I've actually had to have a word with the class about using that technology, and that's not how to do it for the paper, because obviously you can't copy and paste into your exam paper. So it's sort of been going way, you know, and I said I need to see how you write and how you work, because then I will get a feel for your level of language and comprehension, because then I'll know whether you're going to need that extra time for processing on the exams, which you won't get if you don't give me the evidence that I need. So I think they all got the message and understood, but it's just surprising how, you know, they think they're doing really well by using copy and paste and getting all this volumes of research. I couldn't even read it. It was all putting for me, seeing all this loaded text. I just want to know, did you understand the question, and if so, what was it in your words? So but yeah, so which then actually then leads me on to the next question I want to talk to you about, which is the process that you use for assessing individuals. You've talked about dyslexia, that you assess dyslexia. So how do you go about assessing for dyslexia and other learning difficulties when you're working with your learners?
So it's a really interesting process, and it's quite a long-winded process. The first thing that I would do is have an initial consultation with somebody, chat through the reasons why they feel that they want to pursue a diagnostic assessment. And then I would talk them through the process, and then we would talk about their background information. So I try to gather background information from a range of sources. So obviously the learner, the person who is being assessed, is the expert in this situation. They know the things that they are great at, they know the things that they find challenging, but they also know what strategies they have in place. So they can talk about those. I also, depending on the age of the learner, I would gather background information from school or college. And if the person is comfortable, then we could talk to a workplace, but obviously it's based on the age and stage of the learner. Once I'd gathered all that background information, I can then kind of put that together to get a feel for the student or for the individual, and see their historical difficulties, but also, like I said, those strengths. We would then go into the assessment, which takes a little while, a couple of hours, and it looks at a range of tasks and a range of processes, which gives me real insight into how they use different skills. Take away those assessments, mark them, and then triangulate them with all the other information that I've got. So the information that the learners told me, the observations that I've taken in the assessment process, and then form a diagnostic decision, which comes in the form of a lovely long-winded report. Which I give to students and individuals and say, take it for a little while. You're going to need a little while with it. And then we meet again and we talk through the key takeaways. Because I think that we all know that whenever you get kind of feedback, so if it's when you're at school, you rush to read it, don't you? And you scan for the things that you want to see. So you either scan for the positives, and you look immediately at the positives and nothing else,
mm,
or more likely you scan for the things that
yeah,
aren't necessarily so positive. And I
yeah,
want the people that I have assessed to take away the balance. I want them to
mm,
kind of, I really want to
mm,
emphasize
mm,
definitely the strengths,
yeah,
and ways in which they can capitalize on those strengths
yeah.
to overcome the things that they find a bit more challenging.
Yeah, oh, I'm really pleased about that. So I was going to ask you about how you tailor recommendations to support the learners in their work environment. And I think you've answered that quite a lot. But what I did want to sort of ask as well is about helping people to identify their strengths, even if they've got weaknesses. You can overcome those weaknesses. And one of the things I'm very passionate about is building confidence, skills, and
Oh,
knowledge
yeah,
in the use of whatever technology and whatever it is. So, and a lot of the things I've noticed with the people that I work with is they struggle with the confidence, skills, and knowledge across the board. So how do you help build on those confidence issues, those skills, you
yeah,
know, because obviously you're so going to be so switched on what the strengths are and the limitations. To how do you help them to overcome, you know, to look at the positives in
yeah.
themselves?
I think that's a really, really good question. And you're right, it's so pertinent, because if you find reading and writing challenging, just for argument's sake, I know they're huge, broad strokes, but if you do find the process of reading and then conveying your ideas in writing challenging,
Mm.
quite a lot of the school curriculum is based around that.
Yeah.
And dependent on how far through your learning you are, that is quite a lot of time spent doing something that you find challenging,
Mm.
that potentially takes you longer,
Yeah.
takes more effort,
Yeah.
and that then maybe you're not achieving as well in.
Yeah.
So that's quite a lot of erosion of self-confidence and
Yeah.
self-esteem, isn't it? And
Totally.
you're
Yeah.
right, it's
Yeah.
just so important to
Yeah.
build that self-esteem. And so in my questionnaires, I put a very big section at the end, very big section. Take time, please, to tell me about your strengths. And
Mm.
within that, I put kind of bullet points of, I want you to talk about your hobbies. I want you to
Mm.
talk about your achievements.
Yeah.
What things do you do
Yeah.
that don't involve these things that you
Yeah.
find challenging?
Yeah.
And I really try hard to get to know the students,
Mm.
definitely, that I support.
Yeah.
It's quite different with an assessment, because obviously it's kind of a snapshot. You see the
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
at initial consultation, you see them at assessment, and then you see them to follow up. But I still do invest the time in getting to know about them as a person, because I
Yeah.
feel like that holistic
Yeah.
element, that
Yeah.
holistic approach is just so important.
Yeah.
Because I was writing a recommendation the other day, and just chatting to the student, just kind of between assessments, I said, "Oh, you were really good at that one. Can you
Mm.
tell me a bit about what you do in your spare time? Because I feel like you might be kind of a
Mm.
footballer or a
Mm.
dancer, because
Mm.
you know."
Mm.
And they replied, "Oh, yeah, I do this in my spare time." So in my recommendations, then I was able to say, let's incorporate some physicality into what you're doing. So if
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
revising, can you do this? Or,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I think that also just taking the time to put that in writing
Yeah.
for somebody
Yeah.
helps them to feel seen and acknowledged, and
Yeah.
say, "Oh, actually that person was really listening,
Yeah.
and they've taken on board what I'm good at, and they're going to help me to use
Yeah.
that."
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. And again, working with the learners that I do work with, you know, especially in the building of confidence courses, they're there because they have got no confidence. You know, they're worried about, and again, a lot of them tend to be with English as a second language. They're worried about speaking. They're worried about, you know, actually going the cultural diversity and stuff like that. So as part of the course, I do mock interviews with them at the end. We focus on the key sort of questions that you might ask, you know, tricky and competency-based questions, and how you'd answer them. And I've brought in the use of social media examples I've got from the different platforms as examples for them to watch. And then I get them to do it. So not because I'm trained in as a career coach, because I'm not. It's all the experience that I've been through to relatable experience. But what I do is get them to talk about themselves. So I give them 2 questions to prepare, one, choose which one they want to do. And then I get them to speak it in the group. So they've got that chance to do it. And then without them expecting it, I'll then carry on with the interview to see how they get on. And it's great to suddenly start, when they start talking about themselves or something they're passionate with, how they go from the nervous sort of person struggling to then going on to talking about themselves and the transformation of how they are coming across. So because they haven't expected it and so on, they haven't seen the visual appearances of how they've changed and transformed. So when I go back with the feedback afterwards and I'm talking to them, I talk about the fire, the passion inside of you, finding that passion that sets you alight. And then what I sort of say to them is, when you're talking about that, there was a whole different personality that came through. I want you to think about how you were feeling and what it was that made you feel like that, and take that and apply it to the other stuff. So that if you can then build on all this positivity, and it's taken me a lot of thinking myself to go from the negative to the positive, but take away the positives of what you're good at and what your strengths are, and anything that isn't good at, it doesn't matter, because we don't have to be good at everything, but you play to your strengths and work on your areas of weaknesses, but bring it through so that you're so confident in what it is, so that then when you're talking about yourself and you're going through it, yes, there's loads of people with the same skill set as each other, but what is it about you that makes you different and you special, that brings that? And if you know that about yourself, whatever that is, your USP, that is your super strength, that can get you through anything. Because people, I sound like a social media person now, people buy from people, they see the personality, they see the presence, and it's that which is what makes people want to engage with you, not what you write and stuff like that, and all the money you can make in the social media context, but in them, I'm trying to them to find themselves and what makes them stand out, and they're unique. Because that way, then with the language barriers and stuff like that, they're answering, they know what they are good at, so they get used to sort of doing it, and it sort of helps even with across the board for the confidence and stuff like that, because they start seeing the positives in themselves, not the negatives. And it's so much easier to think of all the things you're not good at, and it's really hard to think of what you are good at. So I really do build on that positive element of it, and get them to think about that, and it does sort of help. I mean, I always say to them, it's not going to happen overnight, but it will help you on the journey towards, you know, being positive and the confidence in yourself. So, but which is good to see. So
that sounds lovely.
Oh, thank
that
you.
sounds really lovely. I'm a great believer in an affirmation. I think that affirmations are just wonderful and really pertinent to building self-confidence. Because like you say, people can list things that they find difficult very, very easily, but things that are positive about themselves. But if you can see it, if it's in writing and you can see it somewhere, it almost gives it weight, doesn't it?
It does. It's a funny little one on that as well. It's one of the challenges I also make, is that everybody has to be on camera when I speak to them. I work from the visuals and the prompts and stuff like that, so I can tell whether I'm talking that's engaging or it's not. And I had this on the last course I had. One of the learners didn't want to be on camera, so I let it go for the first session. But I said to them I wanted to speak to them afterwards to understand the reasons why. One had technical issues, but this particular person didn't want to be on it. And I sort of said, as part of the building your confidence, the first thing of building our confidence is to be showing up and being on camera, and so we can see you. Anyway, I got to talk to the person at the end, and they basically shared their reasons for why they didn't want to be on camera, which was a totally understandable and relatable scenario. But I turned it to, I'd been to the same process myself, and that I had those issues with the confidence and how we looked and how we appear and how we saw ourselves, and that I'd gone on a process or a journey that started off with the diet and the weight and the building the confidence and the exercise through that. And so then once I dealt with the physical elements of me, I had to then deal with the mental side of myself and do that journey. And that was the next challenge, was first of all to accept you are for who you are, how you look, and how you appear, and then to how you are in the mindset to take yourself from that negative to that positive. And I did it through journalism, journaling. And I wasn't allowed to write anything negative. I had to look for 3 positive things every day and write it in my book. And I did that. Anything negative had to be literally extinguished straight away.
Binned.
Yeah, exactly. And I did it solidly for 6 months until I ran out of
Wow.
space of the book. And I got that. And I all around me is all positive things of stuff like that. And you've probably seen what the bee, you know, I'm all about the bees and everything else, and what the word bees actually stands for. Apart from obviously the with my name, but I've built the brand as around the bee, and the Be Social, Get Digital. What it's the summary of my own journey and my own transformation from where I was to where I am now, and how I've overcome all the challenges that I've had to manage. And so by the time I'd finished sharing my story with her, I'd not only got her to come on camera, but to actually be talking with me, so I could see her and do like that. So that was a real proud moment for getting somebody that didn't want to do it, and then she came in the class the following week on camera with everybody else and took part, even in the mock interviews at the end where she was engaging. So I was really pleased with how, you know, that you can do that. And I've never been called inspiring before. I know we don't actually want to inspire people, we want to aspire people, but even having that being said about you was, for me, was a confidence
Absolutely.
so which is good. So which brings me on to another topic now, because I think we talked a little bit too much about me for a minute. But one of the things, obviously being in technology, is something I'm passionate about. What I would love to know is how you've used technology in your business, and what technology do you use?
So get ready.
I'm waiting for the list, don't worry.
So as a professional, I definitely use Dictate a lot. That I was talking to my husband about this last night, and I think it came from, I was demonstrating it all the time and saying to students, you know, this is amazing, it's life-changing, you know, you're literally going to plug in, you're going to speak your ideas, you're capitalizing on those verbal strengths, and there's your annotation, or there is your essay. And you know, you can tweak it. It's not going to be perfection straight away. It might be, but you've got that option of hybrid tweaking. And I realized that I was saying it all the time, but not necessarily practicing it. And practically, when I was studying, I just had papers everywhere. And my brain also felt quite busy with all these papers everywhere. And I thought, do you know what? I think what I need to do right now is dictate. I need to get it from here to here and go. And then, honestly, it was just like a light bulb moment. I had been extolling the virtues of it to all of my students for years, and then I just went, I don't know why I haven't been using this. So I use dictation all the time. I use transcription software, so I record discussions, obviously, all the permissions and all of those kind of things, but I use Otter, I think that's what it's called.
Okay. I don't know that one. That's a new one.
So you get 300 free minutes a month, which is great. I love a freebie.
Oh yeah, ditto.
So you simply put it on, record, have your discussion, press stop, and you've obviously got your voice recording. Obviously, love that. You can go back to that and kind of listen back. Helps me with marking if I'm doing assessments, because obviously I can listen back and just hear what people are saying. But then it'll work on it for a little while, and then it'll say your recording is transcribed, and it pings up with the transcription of your discussion, which is just amazing, isn't it? So that's great, because that obviously helps me in my role. And I also use Immersive Reader every day, all the time. So I love the fact that it reads it aloud, because obviously I proofread my reports, I proofread all of my work, but we all get a little bit snowblind to what we've written, don't we? And so totally. I find that listening to it makes me
Yeah.
go, that was a little bit wonky
Yeah.
there, or I
Yeah.
missed that word.
Yeah.
But I love all the facilities within it as well. So being able to change your background color, having the
Yeah.
line focus,
Yeah.
because I read quickly, and so
Mm.
I kind of read ahead, and then I go, no, I need to take it back again because I
Yeah.
need to be checking for accuracy at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are the things that I absolutely couldn't live without in terms of my practice.
Yeah.
And they're the things that I use in my teaching. But
Yeah.
I also use my study bar. Have you come across my study bar?
No. Oh, it sounds too exciting stuff to do today.
So my study bar is free. It's from Cool Scotland. The Cool
Right.
Scotland website is amazing for all things technology.
Yeah.
And it's a suite of it's a kind of lots of different things. It comes under the umbrellas of reading, planning, writing, I think maybe organizing. So it comes up as a little grey toolbar when you download it, and then you
Mm.
get lots of free options.
Oh,
So
wow.
for students who have visual difficulties or suffer with visual stress,
Yeah.
there are different overlays. So
Yeah.
you can put an overlay over the screen,
Yeah.
or you can use a reading ruler that you lock, so it has
Yeah.
the color that
Oh,
you
wow.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can tailor it to your colors. You can tailor
Yeah.
it to how deep you want the color to be, or if you want it to be quite subtle color.
Yeah.
And again, you can have that line focus. So you can make
Yeah.
it screen wide and have
Yeah.
one line focus, or you
Yeah.
can have kind of 5 line focus. So
Yeah.
I know that you can change background colors in Word
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
Immersive Reader, but
Yeah.
it means that when you're doing research online, if
Yeah.
having a different color helps you
Yeah.
to access that text, it's
Yeah.
there and it's
Oh,
free.
brilliant. Oh, that sounds really good. That sounds really
Yeah.
good. And I'm glad you said that about the word. Yeah, because we were covering on that recently, because one of the learners, actually two of them, have been working at home where their text has been the setup with the black background, the white text, because they can't read black on white. And of course, they've done all their formatting, sent the stuff or uploaded it for me. And of course, I'm seeing it with white with the black, and the highlighting and stuff they've used. I can't read it. So I sort of was
Yeah.
going through why did you do that in the class? And of course, they explained the reason why. So then I said, well, you can change the page color to make it so for you, I can read it, it's okay for you, but it won't affect the settings for your,
Yeah.
default settings. So at least then when you send the work, it'll be in a way that I can sort of read it. But yeah, but when we also played with the accessibility features in Word, because I have to
Oh
say,
yeah.
I don't do it much myself. I should do. I've tried it. But for me, I'm easier. My brain is quicker typing than it is trying to dictate and do it. So and then, because I found when I was dictating, I had to go through too much. It was too slow for me, and I had to go and edit it. Anyways, it's easier to type it, and ChatGPT proof it. But yeah, so we had a bit of fun where we had a class discussion discussing the merits of it. Of what they were learning in the classroom. So they were all speaking up. We had it recorded. It was live on the interactive smartboard, so they saw it all coming up there. And then we got it to read back what was said. Oh, it brought some very, very funny results when some of the things they said had been misunderstood and got in
Yeah.
there. But it was quite entertaining. But again, a lot of these tools, none of them had been aware of or knew
No.
were available to them. So
No.
it was really opening up their eyes to the technology out there and how useful it can be, not just
Yeah.
in the classroom, but for home and stuff like that they do.
Exactly.
And especially if they do struggle with the spelling and grammar and things like that and stuff, how they can use the audio. And I often say that, well, if you struggle with writing, if you do voice notes or dictate, we've got something then that we can use that will
Yeah.
help you to get that more independence, especially with people with dyslexia, because, that really does, cause them embarrassment,
Yeah.
because they really do struggle. It's not that they can't read, they can probably read what it is or understand enough, but it's then them typing it back or getting down what it is they want to say. And invariably I end up sitting there typing for them, and they're sort of thinking about what it is they want to say, and I'm typing it in. But I
Yeah.
want to try to get them so that they can get those, even if they want to think about what they want to say and have it recorded, that they can then use that information in the session. So that's one of the next things I'm going to be sort of building on for my developing their digital skills and using the technology that they've got but hadn't thought of. So I haven't done it yet, but it's definitely where I'm going with the supporting, especially when you've got 4 people in the class out of 5 people that have got an additional need of some description. I
Yeah.
can't sit there and type everybody's answers up,
No.
so I want to sort of try and use that. And a Google Translate is another thing, you know, where you can get
Yeah.
that information and stuff like that. So our mobile phones are becoming a real good tool for using in the
Amazing.
classroom and making accessibility easy for good for all. And that which actually goes on. I was going to ask you about immersive reading and dictation. I think we've covered that. So, are there? I've sort of just shared a little bit with you, but are there any success stories that you can share that involve using technology that's helped any of your clients?
Yeah, so as you were talking about conveying your ideas in writing, I was kind of thinking that it's that white page, isn't it? It's the
Mm.
blinking cursor with the
Yeah,
white page. So
yeah,
you've done all your prep work, you know, it's time to start writing, and that can be such a huge barrier,
yeah,
can't it?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think what you're saying about students dictating to you in typing is amazing because
Mm.
you're overcoming a barrier there and getting the ideas on paper, aren't you? And
Yeah.
also you're almost starting to introduce that dictation process, aren't you? So
Mm.
that you can kind of pull yourself out of the equation and put
Yeah,
dictation in, so
yeah,
you get that
yeah.
independence. But I think that that has definitely been one of the things that I've found has been transformative for learners
Mm.
that I work with,
Mm.
because, like you say, mobile phones are integral now, aren't they?
Mm.
But
Mm.
in a secondary school classroom,
You can't use
you
them.
can't, you
No,
can't, because
no.
how can you tell
Yeah,
somebody who is genuinely
yeah,
using their technology and
yeah,
somebody who is WhatsApping their mate, which is
yeah,
fair enough, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so working with the older learners, they may not they might be at a point where they've just come from secondary school, and
mm,
so their mobile phone is just not something that they are using
no,
in any way in their learning,
no,
to knowing that it's right there. And so
yeah,
quite a lot of the time I try and teach students that I work with early on
yeah,
the tech that they
yeah,
might find useful. And I say
yeah,
to them, you know, I'm going to give you some tools here.
yeah,
You might not want it now,
yeah,
you might not want it next month, but you
yeah,
do want to know how to use it when you
yeah,
come across it.
yeah.
And so I love an analogy, and all of my students are like, here we go again, Holly, here's another analogy. But I introduce it as like the spare tire. So
Yeah,
you don't want to learn how to change your tire in
no,
the middle of the night in December
no,
when it's raining,
no,
when you're in desperate need. You don't
yeah,
want to have to learn how to use Dictate or Immersive Reader when you've got a deadline tomorrow, because
no,
it's just too panic
yeah,
inducing,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you've got that toolkit already
yeah,
of, okay, I could use Dictate for this, or I could
yeah,
use Immersive Reader for that, or I could use this for that, or this for that,
yeah, yeah,
then you've got all the tools that you need, and you don't have to panic because you're already there. And
no,
I also say to my students that it doesn't have to be perfection first time, and you don't have
no,
to just rely on that. So you can
no,
type a bit and dictate
yeah,
a bit.
yeah,
You can use Immersive Reader for a bit and
yeah,
then do some reading yourself. You know,
yeah,
it can be hybrid.
yeah.
So to go back to your question, because I've gone off on a massive
It's all
tangent.
right, don't worry, don't worry.
Definitely with dictation software, because I initially trained as an English teacher. So that's what I started my career doing. And
Yeah,
so I've been doing GCSE English support sessions with a assistive technology,
yeah,
study skills lens for the
mm,
past few years.
yeah,
And with the creative writing element, and the producing your own writing element, that can be a huge barrier for
yeah,
students
yeah,
with any kind of neurodivergences, because there are so many processes involved in
yeah,
generating ideas,
yeah,
planning the structure,
yeah,
keeping all of the accuracy in mind,
yeah,
making it creative, making it engaging.
yeah,
There's just a lot going on,
yeah,
isn't there?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so, alongside developing planning strategies and thinking about making each of those processes separate, it's
yeah,
about, right, how do we get from that blank piece of paper to those wonderful ideas that you've been
yeah,
telling me about? What are
yeah,
we going to put in place here?
yeah,
And
yeah.
dictation has been that for a lot of students.
Oh, well,
And I think that I've also got this lovely, I had this book, and it had this suggestion in it that said, when you find something difficult, set a time limit for it, which sounds a
yes,
bit counterintuitive,
yeah,
but set a 2-minute time limit. So if you know that you've got to start writing an essay, start a 2-minute time limit, because it takes the pressure off. Because you
Yeah.
know you can't write an essay in 2 minutes. You know
No.
you can't even write an introduction in 2 minutes.
No.
But you
No.
get some ideas on the
Yeah.
page, and
Yeah.
because you've taken the panic out of it,
Yeah.
some of them will be brilliant. And
Yeah.
actually, you
Yeah.
might be able to run with that, and you've got the ball rolling. That cursor's not blinking on a blank piece of paper.
Yeah.
You've started, and then you
Yeah.
can just keep going with that momentum.
Yeah. No. Oh, that's a really good idea. I like that. That is really good. Ooh, might have to pinch that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. No.
I pinched it off them.
Yeah. No. It's good because again, you're saying about the blank page, going back to the class or the scenario I was given earlier on about the copy and pasting and the research. So again, I did something completely just out of my head on the spot, which actually happens to me most lessons actually. They're always very bespoke, you know. I have an idea and then I literally will on the spot come out with saying, I've done before, just try it out. And yeah, so because we're all doing I think it's because we did the mock exam in one of the other classes this week, it was very in my mind, this is what you need to do, and knowing this particular group is working towards starting the exam in September. There were skills I know I've got to make sure they're doing. So obviously the research tool skills of using the internet hadn't produced the desired effect that I wanted. Yes, it proved that they could research information, but copy and pasting into Word was not what I wanted to see as the result. But also because social media has also become very much a part of the digital skills, and again sharing my own journey, being the fact of having no social media present whatsoever 2 years ago to going from one extreme to the other is quite a big transformation. And also going from using it for a personal use to using it for a business use, to not just using it for a business but then sort of delving into the world of content creation, which I never thought I would do. One of the questions that they have to do for level 1, it comes under the brief of communication through email, communication through chat rooms, you know, video calls, and also the use of social media. And one of the things that we have to do, or they have to do rather, is demonstrate that even if they're not on social media, they would be able to identify which platform they would use for why, to create a post on an event that's happening, or to advertise a job, or how they would go about putting together what they need for the post. So they don't have to be on the platforms, but they need to know about the platforms. So the research, if you like, has been getting them to research information to find out what they can do or what they can use them for from the use of the internet and YouTube. So as I said, I don't make them go on social media if they've not used it, but it's getting there. So and I've used that across all of the classes that I do, because it's a way of introducing social media to normally I'm terrified and don't want to use the platform that goes into all the security risks and everything else, all the negatives out there. To actually have had people coming onto the classes wanting to scale their business and everything else, and I've managed to talk for 3 hours on something I hadn't even planned to talk about, but that was another story. Anyway, going back to the gist of this comment was that so the session was supposed to be on Word, but instead of doing it on Word on skills that they'd already done and I taught them, I got them to create social media posts. So they had to create the poster, the image for the event, which they had to come up with themselves, because I thought, you know, they're into it, they're more come up with something themselves than if I did one of the boring ones off of the wall that was in the classroom promoting. So they had to come up with the concept of what it was they were going to promote, and then do the text post to go with it in Word, so that they saved the picture, cropped it, and then imported the post into their another Word document, and then write about it. And then the annotation was to then tell me why they chose the social media platform that they used and how they went about doing what they did, so that they were thinking about what skills that they used, what they found challenging, and what they needed to work on. So it covered about 4 different things in the scenario, but it actually worked out really, really good. It was better than I was expecting it to do, and they all created their own thing. There was nobody that, you know, sat there with a blank white piece of paper with the cursor flashing. They all went and got it. And the one that probably I was most concerned about she did apologise in that she hadn't created a poster, she'd used an online image. But I said, that's fine, because you've still achieved the task of what it is I've asked you. But it also turned out to be the person that had done the most of the copying and pasting with the homework. So that's why I was able to say, by doing your work, I can see what you're able to do.
Yeah.
And then I will know where the support issue is and what it is, because I said, you can't have your other half doing the homework for you in the exam. You've got to be able to do it yourself. So it got the issue across more in a way that they understood, and she understood why she had to be doing her work and show me her skills, because at the end of the day, it's her skills that she needs to develop, not anyone else's, or having somebody else doing it for her. So yeah, so it was productive. And it was a good session, seeing what they could do and come up with. But I said, you know, when you're doing your answers, you aren't going to be able to sit there writing essays. You've only got a sort of amount of time, so you've just got to get your message across and be clear and as concise as you can in a way. And as long as I can see how you're writing, I will get to know how your writing style is. So at least then I'll get more of an understanding, even if it's not grammatically correct. As long as you can read what it is and understand what it is, and they've answered the questions, then you know that's the gist of it. So yeah, so it's all good, good experience in trying out this different technologies or ways of working. And especially, I know it's not all necessarily neurodiverse, but it's all skills that are helping people to deal with it, definitely. And I don't know about you, but in our adult education environment, we always have these individual learning plans that we have to complete at the end of each session, and record our progress. And they ask these questions, and the questions, even for my brain, are, you have to think about it and give examples of it. And I really do hate having to do them. So when they sit there and they struggle with what to say, I'm thinking, I know what you mean. And, you know, I know exactly what you mean. And, you know, questions like, how has my tutor helped me to achieve my, you know.
But that empathy,
Yeah,
and understanding is so important, isn't it?
yeah,
And I think that
exactly.
you gave an example earlier when we were talking about kind of talking to a student and supporting them through your own experiences. I
Yeah,
think that's key, isn't it?
yeah,
That you show your own
yeah,
humanity
yeah,
and say, you know, this is something that I use, and that's
yeah,
really been transformative when I've been talking to students. When I
yeah,
say I use dictation all the time, or I use
yeah,
immersive reader all the time, they kind of
yeah,
go,
yeah,
oh,
yeah. And I
so
think
you're
that's,
normalizing it,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
it's not something that you do for any
no,
reason other than
no.
it's a tool that makes your
Yeah,
life easier.
exactly. And I think that's it. And I think it's getting over those barriers of, you know, I think the person who's been the biggest influence to me in strategies has been my son. Having a son that is neurodiverse and didn't get a diagnosis until he was 15, and looking at all the strategies that he taught himself and put in place, and to go on to uni, he's been the biggest inspiration and eye-opener for
Oh,
me
that's
in
so
what
lovely.
he's been able to do and what he's able to achieve. He's inspired me, if I'm totally honest. And you know, I didn't know, you know, my own neurodiverse journey really came from going through all of the stuff that I went through with him and finding, you know, about his individuality. So yeah, I totally have empathy for people that are, you know, with whatever their difficulties are. I can
Yeah.
totally understand it. So which sort of brings me on to the next topic I want to talk about training and workshops. My discovery was through attending stuff at a recovery college and working in a recovery college and learning more about it, and not knowing at the time, and as part of my own recovery journey, and getting to meet some amazing people that I met, particularly in the world of being neurodiverse, and attending a session. And I went on a session to find out about ADHD from an education point, to learn about it, and didn't expect to 4 weeks later have found something completely about myself that I didn't know and understand, overlapping with the ASD as well, which I also sort of started to sort of get more of an understanding with. I want to bring on about the training and workshops that you do, because I know that you've talked about what you do in your business, and about your assessing, but you do, if I'm not mistaken, you do training in schools as well. So
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about the training that you offer to schools, workplaces, and how, if people are struggling with neurodiversity, how they can benefit from the workshops and the training that you do?
Absolutely. So I think it came from working with students and introducing those tools to students. And like we just said earlier, not knowing that those tools are really
Mm,
easily at your disposal and
mm,
free most of the time.
mm,
And so so I was working with students, showing them the technology, and then I could see that it was having a huge benefit, and I could see that you don't generally have the time to do lots and
mm.
lots of research into different tools, do you? When
No,
you're
no,
teaching all
mm,
the time, there are
no,
so many other things that
yeah,
compete and need your attention. So I started off offering free to use assistive technology sessions
mm,
in schools
yeah,
to show teachers, learning support assistants, the tools that I've talked about. So Dictate, Immersive Reader, My Study Bar, and just little tweaks to make to that can really just
mm,
change the experience
mhm,
of the
mhm,
learner. And interestingly, quite a lot of the training that I've done, people have come and said, "Oh, actually, I'm going to use that, or I could use that with so and so,"
mm,
and immediately can see the benefit and how it will support the people that they work with.
yeah,
I've yet to deliver these to in the workplace, but they always form part of my recommendations when I do diagnostic assessments for
yeah,
adults. They
yeah,
always form part of my recommendations with
yeah,
lots of lovely tutorials on how to access and how to use. But I feel like that's the next step, that is
yeah,
where I would like to take the training sessions. I also do sessions on dyslexia awareness
mm,
for schools and again in the workplace. So
mm,
the when we do diagnostic assessments, we map to a definition of dyslexia. So I
mm,
talked about the process earlier.
mm,
We gather all the background information, do the
mhm,
assessment, and then we come to a diagnostic decision based
mm,
on the
mm,
definition of dyslexia. And so it kind of really unpicks that
mm,
um, for for the non-specialist to just
mm,
say, these are the things that your workers or your students could be struggling with, and this could be things that you can do to make
yeah,
that slightly easier.
yeah,
So the format of the presentation, the format of the training is basically here's the difficulties that your learners could experience. Here's
yeah,
things that you could do to alleviate those difficulties or to support those difficulties, and they can be physical strategies or
yeah,
planning strategies or
yeah,
ways of delivering information, but quite often they're also technology based. So have you
yeah,
thought about trying this? And have you thought about, like you said earlier, could they submit their work as a voice memo, or could they
yeah,
do a video call instead of having to, that
yeah,
just an
yeah,
alternative ways
yeah,
of
yeah,
presenting
yeah.
information.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds really good. I mean, that's some of the things that there's so many ideas I've got for the Buzz group, and things that I'd like to see sort of happen to make it a really useful resource at the moment. It's a little bit on a sort of not on a hiatus, but there's only so much you can do when you're the only person commenting and posting in
Yeah.
there, and it's sort of I definitely won't close it, but it's trying to work out how to get the best use out of it.
Yeah.
And working with it. So, but there are things like I like the Digital Skills Academy. I do so want to get up and running, especially now with the funding being cut and only investing in up to level 1 qualifications because they're focusing on the target area. But there also are so many people that aren't able to access that curriculum anyway.
Mm,
So,
mm,
there's so many things that I think will help people that have got disabilities and additional needs that aren't being catered for at the moment. And again, working with somebody at the moment that has additional needs that doesn't read, doesn't, trying to look at the technology that will help them, but they're not trying to do it in a way with the technology to help them is quite difficult, especially when the person isn't local. So trying to find strategies that will help people like that that aren't able to use a computer, aren't able to use just like being able to read your letter read
Yeah.
your letter. And you think, oh, that should be a straightforward thing. But if you can't use a device to be able to read the thing or to scan it, you've got starting problems to begin with. So
Yeah.
so I'm still forever on the. I mean, I'm just keep looking for apps and things I think that might help. And then when you find something, they've got costs involved, and not everybody's got the money to
Yeah.
pay for it. So you've got to sort of look at things that you can get done sort of for free. But it's as well, it's being able to teach the people, especially if they've got comprehension learning difficulties as well, how they can use technology to help them,
Yeah.
which isn't easy. And at the moment, I don't think people are fully aware of the full implications that are out there for certain people. I think people
Yeah.
know, but they don't get the full breadth or depth unless it affects you personally. So people that are working with tech will create tech and oh, it'd be ideal for,
Yeah.
but they aren't actually first-hand experience of using it or aware of that a lot of these people who have got a disability or thing aren't able to work, not because they don't want to, but they physically can't. And it's how we address that and meet that the digital skills gap that we're currently facing. And I think that's something else that I feel so strongly about, so passionately about. That is, why, when I do my training, I don't charge huge amount of money, and I signpost to stuff that I know that's free to get them starting points and stuff like that, because I know, the issues that people are in. And I think that's something else that is very much about the IT and IT for you. It's Honey's IT and it's IT as information technology, but it's Honey's it as well. We all talked about what is your niche, what is your thing, and that is my it, if you like. My IT is my it's my niche, and the IT for you is the bespoke offer that I do to tailor it to meet your needs, so that it is giving you what you want and what you're looking for in the support in the way that you need it. So it's not just me telling you this is what you got to do, it's me helping you to get the tools to help you to achieve what it is you want to achieve and what you want to learn. So that's a little bit about my where and why. We've talked a lot about the tech that we've used, and I've mentioned a few times about ChatGPT and the use of AI. How much has AI come into play in the work that you do, and how much do you use it?
So very recently, as in last 2 weeks, I
New.
have been, it's very new. It's been obviously on the horizon for a little while, and it's been something that I've kind of been wanting to look into. But I again call Scotland amazing. Put on a free webinar. They do Wednesday webinars every 2 weeks,
Okay.
and it's all technology based.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks ago, they had one on using AI to support learners with dyslexia.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was an absolute whistle stop tour. So it was 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and I had pages of notes afterwards, and
Yeah.
lots of different programs that I wanted to look into. And so then there was another one this week, which was on using iPad accessibility to support
Really? Ooh.
learners, which was really
Ooh.
lovely. And again, I've got a huge list of things that I want to look into, but the two main takeaways I had from those were, I want to say, I hope I'm saying this right, Claude AI,
Yeah.
which is, so I was experimenting with my daughter. My daughter's 10, and so I got a beautiful whiteboard. I can't show it to you because I've scribbled all over it as we've been talking, but it's a cloud with a rainbow underneath it. And I said to her, could you just write me something about your day on that whiteboard, because I want to try something. So it was Monday evening. She wrote something about her day, and I said, "I'll just write a little bit more because I want to just test it out." So she wrote about 5 lines. I took a picture of the whiteboard. So she'd written in whiteboard pen by hand and asked Claude AI to turn it into typed text, and it did.
Oh,
It
wow.
was wonderful. And
Oh,
I just
wow.
thought it's so amazing, because I use whiteboards in my teaching all of the time,
Yeah.
because we have discussions and I go, right, I'll note that down, and we can move it around, we can restructure. but I also use pen and paper. I personally am very physical in my
Yeah.
learning. So if I'm
Yeah.
doing a training session,
Yeah.
I make a massive mind map,
Yeah.
which is full of color. I did some
Yeah.
yesterday, and it's huge and it's so colorful. But
Yeah.
now I need to do something with that. You know, I can
Yeah.
look at it like that, but I
Yeah.
need to do something with it. So being
Yeah.
able to take a picture of it,
Yeah.
it get turned into typed text, then means
Oh,
that I can
wow.
use it. And so the implications for my learners are that they've done this lovely planning. We take a picture of it, it gives them a framework of typed text that they can do what they want with
Oh,
then, can't they? They
wow.
don't have to kind of go over that blinking
Yeah.
cursor
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
talked
Oh,
about
wow.
earlier.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
already there. So
Oh,
that
wow,
was
that's
great.
good. Yeah.
And Microsoft Lens, again, quite similar, picking up the text. So taking a picture of, say, a letter,
Mm.
and it picks up the text, and then I'm probably missing out stages here because it's very new and I haven't tried it myself, but then being able to translate. So for students who have English as an additional
Yeah.
language,
Yeah.
then translate it into the
Yeah.
appropriate language.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such a game changer,
Yeah.
just
Oh,
so
totally.
quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've used, because one of my clients is Ukrainian, and she has limited English. It's a lot better than it was when I first knew them. So I've been teaching them Canva. They've been wanting to learn how to use Canva.
I love Canva.
So we wanted to learn Canva, but it's also actually become a new business startup. So it's literally going through setting up the business, going through everything, and it's been great because it's been throwing me into things I haven't done before, things I was going for myself, and you know, it's been really bespoke as we've been going, to the point now I don't even plan anything when I go to see her. It's we work out what it is we're going to do in the next stage of the journey. So yesterday we introduced them to ChatGPT. She'd known I've been using it because I've used it to translate the training notes in. So I've got training notes put into English on using how to use Canva, and then I've translated it into Ukrainian. So then I ended up with a dual resource
Amazing.
with it does bilingual thing. So we were trying to produce her portfolio intro yesterday, and so she'd found some text that she'd got and she'd saved it on her phone as a photo, which she does an awful lot of. But apparently she had some feedback telling her it wasn't very good, and I felt for her because she'd obviously tried to do something in English and she'd, you know, got it there. So, but she'd also run well, there's another issue, but anyway, I scanned her picture on my phone and got it as text, then put it in an email, sent it to her, then accessed the email, got the text from there, copied it and pasted it into Word and then into ChatGPT, and then basically said, we need to create a profile for our portfolio. Can you help? Bit more involved than that, but basically at the end of the session we'd ended up with a really good portfolio about her, what work she does and everything else. So we got it all in English, and then I got it translated into Ukrainian.
Amazing.
She could be doubly sure that she was happy with it. Then she saw it, so we reordered it all on the text to make it, and then we've started now the task of copying and pasting the Word text into the Canva, building up her portfolio. So
Amazing.
it was really good, but we wouldn't, you know, you can't teach that in the classroom.
No.
You can only do that type of thing when you're working on a one-to-one with a client. And it's just, you know, showing the power. And she'd never used AI or come across what it is and seeing what it could do. So I've been building up the tools and helping her to how she could do it. So the trouble is at the moment, she still struggles to type on the QWERTY keyboard. So she's gone for a Ukrainian keyboard layout. So hopefully she can plug that in and use the keyboard a bit more. So at the moment we are collaborating on, I'm typing what she wants to sort of say, or we're getting it there so she can see it, and then we're sort of doing like that, but again using the translation tools from
Amazing.
being, so it's really pulling it in. So definitely, I mean, I've never used AI before, and even last year I was really skeptical. And then I was challenged by somebody that uses AI on Instagram to amend my thinking. And I, again, like me, gone from one extreme to the other now with what I do and how I'm using it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I see all these stuff saying you've got to do these prompts and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. But I think I just used it in my way, and the results I've got doing it in my way, it seems to cope with my very neurodiverse brain and way of thinking. But and I use it to help me with editing text, because I do have a lot of text and I know I can't write concisely. So it does prove a good tool for helping me with that. So I think personally, there's been some really great things out there. So I've actually had in my iPad class now, they weren't interested in learning about social media, but they were very interested to know about ChatGPT and the use of AI. So I said I would bring that into the session at the last one so they could have fun with learning about that. So, which brings me into the more creative things. You talked a little bit about how you used the whiteboard to find some creative ways for getting pictures into text and put it on. What other tools do you find that could help be creative in making the language barrier, whether it be through reading difficulties, comprehension difficulties, or even as an additional language? What do you think we could do that would be more creative to help those people that perhaps aren't accessing the technology at the moment? And what do you think we could be doing that currently isn't being done, or not done enough of, because people aren't aware of the full implications?
Yeah, so I said that I'm quite old school in that I love a big piece of sugar paper and coloured pens. That's my starting point, always my go-to. And I think that because I have a background in working with creative students, I think that, not to generalize, but quite a lot of the time that's works for
Yeah.
creative minds too. And so I use quite a lot of graphic organizers. So starting with mind maps, but then going to lotus blossom diagrams and analogy organizers and vocabulary organizers.
Wow.
So I'll post you the link because they're
Sounds
amazing.
good. I think anybody watching this is going to be with it all as well. So yeah, if you are watching, Holly will definitely be pulling a full blown
Yeah.
kit of support tips and tricks to share after this. Don't worry.
All the links that I've shoehorned in. So the graphic organizers I think it's the website's called Creately, and you can sign up to an account, so you can make a digital version of your organizer. Or if you're like me, you can see the template of the graphic organizer,
Oh,
make it on paper,
yeah,
and then work with it from there. So I think that is kind of your way in almost, isn't it? It's incorporating the visual, practical,
yeah,
creative
yeah,
in a way that can be technology based if you want to,
yeah,
or you can start with the traditional and
yeah,
take it wherever you want to. So
yeah,
that's definitely something that I
yeah.
found useful.
Yeah, oh, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that. So I think I'm conscious of the time as well. For me, I mean, it's been really, really interesting talking to you, and I think I've learned an awful lot from you in the process. Hopefully everybody else has too, and sharing some of the techniques. What would you say has been the most rewarding aspect that you've had with Nurturing ND in your time since you've started your journey?
Oh, that's a big question. I think every time I do a diagnostic assessment or an access arrangement assessment or work with a student and they go away with a tool that they didn't know beforehand, or a strategy that they have tried and gone, oh, I don't like that, or I like that, so I'm going to adapt it. I think it's that taking something away and making
Yeah,
it your own.
yeah,
That was a really general answer, but I think it's what we were talking about earlier. It's not just one thing, is it?
no,
It's
no,
coming at the confidence, it's coming
yeah,
at the strategies,
yeah,
it's equipping the learner, isn't it, to be
yeah,
independent and be confident. So
yeah,
if a student goes away from me with a little bit more confidence, or who's able to say, oh, I tried that, I didn't like that, but I'm going to do that,
yeah.
that is an absolute win in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I had a battle with myself over the last, well, part of my journey, when I was, being told I had to niche down, focus on one area, and that was, what you had to do. And people were telling me what I was doing wasn't, I had to do X, Y, and Z. And the more I kept listening to being told I got to do X, Y, and Z, the confidence in myself that was going, and I couldn't write, I couldn't really do what I wanted to do. And I felt, it was very disjointed and everything else. And I didn't find I was getting the support because people didn't understand what it was I was trying to do and what I was trying to achieve. And I suppose I also struggled to explain what it is I could do. I could do it verbally, doing on a one-to-one, but putting it on paper and in post and stuff like that, I found very, very difficult to do. And that's where, for me, where in a way the AI and using the ChatGPT has been my sort of sounding board for my ideas and things. And I can ask loads of questions, and it doesn't cost me loads of money to pay for it to be told to do something. And that was my other thing, you know, the cost of money to pay out for all this advice that actually wasn't actually helping, didn't sit well with me. So I'd end up with all this negative self-doubt. So trying to be a positive person with building confidence and everything, I was being very good at helping everybody else, but slowly and quietly I was getting more and more in my own, you know, not able to achieve. And in the end, I decided I was going to scrap whatever it was that was being told, and I was going to go with my gut. So I had lots of conversations and help build it out. And also it was the things like posting content and stuff, you know, you've got to do this because everybody else is doing it. And I think, well, why am I doing what everybody else is doing? When, you know, I haven't got the time. There's loads of really good content out there. I should be offering the stuff that other people, and it's all about these figures and getting yourself in the target audience. And it just goes against everything that I agree with or thought or whatever. I know why they say what they're doing. It's the same as you can't have a social media presence on 6 profiles. I do, and I post daily, not on all 6 admittedly, but I use and I do. And like now I can't not do what I've started doing, because ultimately it's what I do, but it's also because I teach it. So you can't, if I'm not on all of them and seeing what they're going, I can't be teaching if I'm not using it. So mine is the focus of I'm on using the content and seeing what there's out there and getting that information, so that when I am doing a session like I was this week, 3 hours on how to use the social media platforms to build your job search, not only do I know how you can go about using it for the search criteria, but I know who the people out there who are producing content, on who to follow and get the tips and stuff like that. And I also know who are the people to follow, to network with, that I can build relationships with, that will then add value to that thing. So for me, I do things completely differently, but I do it my way, and that is what I think makes mine unique, and that is my unique perspective. So, you know, it's even only today with the it, and I saw somebody posting today, what is your niche? Be the it person in the it area you go to. So I thought, well, that is it. I'm Honey's IT and it is IT. So I am it.
I was just going to say, that's exactly what you were talking about before. You are it, you're the resource, aren't you? And so you've got to think about the best way to be the resource, haven't you?
Be the resource. But it really has taken me a while to even get my head around that. So the social media content creation is still a challenge, but we're working on it. But again, I thought, you know, so much is around the digital skills and what I'm doing. I'm going to do the series of the digital skills, but focusing on the elements of what it is we're doing. It's the content that it is what I'm doing, it's writing, and it goes into the place of the classroom. So why start sitting there creating stuff that I'm struggling to do to fulfill what people tell me I do? Why, you know, if I'm doing it for what I've got to do in the classroom, that's what I'm doing it for. You know, the problems are, they say, what are your problems, the target? Well, actually, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm answering the questions I get in the classroom. They may not be the ones that are all out there over social media, but isn't it better to work with the content that you're actually getting asked and being asked, than being things, oh, you've got to fix all these pain points that nobody's asking me for, and to focus on what I am. And so when I do a video, and they aren't often, it's normally because somebody's messaged me saying, how do I do that? That, okay, I'll answer that question because you've asked me a question, and I'll if and I've not done it myself, I'll figure it out and then I'll do a recording and post it. And that's why my videos are very few and far between, but they normally, because somebody's actually asked me, do that, and I'll show you. So, oh dear me. So I know we're really almost out of time now. So what, as a finishing point from you, what tip or advice would you give to other people who are watching, who may be in education or employment, that aren't aware of the neurodiversity and our needs? What tips could you give them, or advice would you give them in how to work with and get the best out of the neurodiverse people that they've probably got in their employment and not realising?
What a brilliant question.
Thank you.
Work with the individual. It's always the individual. So you need to sit down with that individual and chat with them. What are you brilliant at? How can we use those strengths in whatever we're doing? So how can we use those strengths in your learning? How can we use those strengths in our business? How can we help you to get better at those things? And then similarly, what do you find challenging? What do we do to help you, to support you? What can we do to make your role, your learning, whatever it is, simpler, more effective, whatever that student needs? So I think it's communication. It's asking that individual, what do they need?
Communication is key. Above
Yeah.
everything else, communication is
Yeah.
key. Thank you, Holly, for sharing your time with us. So if anybody is wanting to get in contact and find out more about Holly and the Nurturing ND, we're going to put some links in the post or in the captions we go wherever it is, but Holly will share that with you. And if you want to reach out to me, we have got our own unique email address now. So it's beinthespotlight@gmail.com. So any questions that you want to put to us and to Holly, send it to beinthespotlight@gmail.com, and I can forward those on to Holly and we can introduce you and get you in contact. Once again, Holly, thank you ever so much for your time and for joining us today and being a special guest in Be in the Spotlight. Thank you.
Be in the spotlight is the place to be network driven. Discuss technology. Be in the spotlight is the place to be. Tech Talk tips for free.